do you agree that the public is increasingly aware of privacy, data protection, and the operation of digital advertising? And if so, do you think it makes any difference at all?
I think the caveat that we always need to remember when we talk about these things is, all of us and lots of people in our industry, we're not what you would class normal people, in that we kind of know all about this stuff, right? We know the details. We're not your average consumer. So when we hear things like privacy, or when you see an ad that's kind of, a remarketing ad for a product you saw the day before, you kind of look at it with a different set of eyes. So I think it's really important for us to try and kind of think about what this means for the average consumer, and taking that marketer's hat off. Your question kind of had two elements to it. The first one was around awareness. The awareness level has increased massively, not just from things like the Cambridge Analytica scandal, which again made kind of mainstream news, but also things that appear when users interact, like user experience on websites, the pop-ups for consent and a number of other areas, which mean that people are just seeing these messages kind of more often. So awareness is up. The second part is, does it make a difference? It doesn't feel like it's making much of a difference, in the sense that people are just kind of accepting and carrying on, if that makes sense. So I don't know if you guys kind of go into your detailed cookie settings and kind of, select which partners you're willing to share your cookies with, but anecdotally from people I speak to that are not in the industry, they'll accept and they'll just carry on. And that feels like the extent of the difference that it's made. And then when I think about services I use, like Google Maps, incredibly valuable, makes a massive difference to my kind of, daily life. I'm happy with that value exchange. I'm happy to share my data because I'm getting a great service that I don't kind of need to pay for. So ultimately, it doesn't feel like it's making a difference. And some of the stats around things like Facebook's monthly unique users have continued to go up, even in and around that Cambridge Analytica scandal. So it doesn't feel like it's making too much of a difference right now.
I think that sort of behavioural inertia is pretty well understood and accepted. And when I think about the closing of support for third-party cookies in Chrome, it's a bit like addressing these privacy and data protections issues. Principally it's about privacy, isn't it? Without requiring the user to opt in. It's just saying this needs to change. There's a movement in our industry. And so we will change the browser, the way the browser works. It's not a tick box or a I accept button. It's just something that's going to happen, which is a bit different. Do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's kind of, it's becoming one of those things where changes will slowly start to be introduced that kind of force the hands of how people are kind of treating their data, because some of the regulations and the wording are making your cookies be thought of as very valuable, highly confidential personal data, and people may not really appreciate or understand it. So there are other kind of initiatives that are happening to try and enforce some of that change.
And did you want to add to this?
Yeah, I think just to build on Maz's point slightly, there seems to really be the two camps where either the understanding hasn't progressed within the sort of the customer base to the extent that that they're perfectly happy with the way things are and accepting these different terms, or in kind of the bubble we live in, and with the understanding we have and some of the public will, the value exchange is still great enough to allow sort of business as usual. I do think the one area where this has adjusted slightly over the past year has been the increase in, I guess, acceptance of the subscription model for all different types of services. I think even a couple of years ago in the UK in particular, the idea of paying for a newspaper subscription would have seemed a bit of a tricky sell, but you can see from the success of the likes of New York Times, the Athletics, how they've come to market, along with the increased usage of Disney Plus and Spotify, that this is a way that people are happy to interact with the internet. And I think what's interesting and what we might see from this is that when people do use those services, not only are they getting used to a high quality product, but they're getting used to what an environment without digital advertising prevalent within it looks like, which could then negatively impact their perception of what you'd call, I guess, the open web, where the advertising is still prevalent. And I think that dichotomy is something that is important to be aware of, whether users are aware of that initially or not.
An experience, you know, like an app that's apparently free, though, is still very popular. You know,
Yes.
So what you're saying is probably, you know, again, it's one of these things that's trending, but probably not mainstream for now. Maria, have you got something to add on this one?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think I agree with all the points. I think there's a combination of people not minding too much giving away their data, but there is definitely, I think, an awareness around targeting now that wasn't really there before, which can make advertising feel quite personal when it appears in your phone, on your own personal laptop, in your home, that there's kind of an awareness that this ad is being sent to me personally, which I think is a kind of a psychological shift that you wouldn't have watching TV, or even just with the way that we've become smarter with using these tactics. So it's definitely something that we keep in mind, that you need to be very respectful when you're trying to have that kind of one-to-one conversation with a consumer, that you don't kind of overstep any boundaries or try to be too aggressive in that approach. Because also, ultimately what we're trying to do, and I think what users have really benefited from this whole operation, is the increased relevancy. And the obviously the aim is not to be creepy or follow them around. It's just to be like, hey, we know you're interested in these products. There's a discount on, or maybe have you seen it in a different color? And, you know, we've seen really good results with that kind of marketing and those kind of creatives. So we definitely want that to continue, because we see benefit both from an advertiser and from a user perspective. But it's obviously making sure that those the control is there, and that people are aware how to opt in and opt out, and make sure we have something that everyone agrees to going forward, because I think that's going to be key.